One night in the suburbs of Los Angeles, a huge fire broke out in an apartment. The flames had burned almost 70% of the building, but the firefighters continued to struggle extinguishing the blazing fire while saving the people who were trapped. The firefighting team was led by a captain named Gordon Brewer. He mobilized his team to save the people, fighting for their lives until they managed to save all the people who were trapped in the building, including an old woman. A few days later after the fire incident, Gordon came back to his daily life with his harmonious and very happy family. Gordon had a beautiful, motherly wife, Ann Brewer. Gordon and his wife were blessed with a son named Matty. That morning, Gordon and Ann planned to take Matty to see a pediatrician to check on Matty's condition because he had a sore throat. However, because that morning Gordon was going to work, Ann would take Matty to the doctor and ask Gordon to pick them up this afternoon. Long story short, after Matty met the doctor, Ann took her son to the square of the Columbia Consulate building in Los Angeles, while waiting for her husband to come to pick up. Time passed. Ann glanced at her watch, which made her start to feel a little anxious when she realized that her husband had not come to pick them up at the right time. At the same time, right at the end of the road, a police officer was on duty. But he slowed down his motorbike and then stopped and walked in after parking the motorbike right in front of the building. In the middle of a crowd, no one cared about the police's presence. In fact, a car that was ticketed for parking carelessly was considered to be a common occurrence. Not long after, Gordon came with his car. He drove slowly, then parked his car some distance from the building. Right in front of his car, Gordon saw the police standing without paying attention to Gordon's car, which was parked on the side of the road. The policeman was focused on the convoy of Colombian officials and also the car of CIA agents who were entering the consulate building area. Gordon asked permission to park his car because he was going to pick up his family, but the police just smiled without saying a word, as if he was agreeing to Gordon's request. But a few seconds later, when Gordon just stepped forward while waving at his wife and son, suddenly the building exploded. The incident happened so quickly, the FBI agent stated that the powerful explosion resulted in 24 people being seriously injured, 9 people dead, including Colombian officials and also several residents, including Gordon's wife and son. Gordon was thrown several meters after being hit by a taxi. And currently, he still looked shocked and experienced trauma when he found out his family died in the explosion. While Gordon was in hospital, he was being treated intensively. 2 FBI agents were assigned to guard him, and they were worried about Gordon's condition, who seemed very devastated by the death of his son and wife. Gordon accidentally listened to their conversation. They discussed the trigger for the explosion, which came from a police officer's motorbike. Hearing this, Gordon's breath seemed to hitch. He immediately remembered the police whom he encountered before the explosion occurred. Gordon realized that the police seemed to have deliberately in disguise to carry out his action. In a condition that had not yet fully recovered, Gordon forced himself to get up, and finally he was given permission to visit the FBI office. After providing information about the police officer he had met before the explosion, the FBI then played a CCTV recording taken from the Colombian consulate building. Indeed, the video showed a police officer's activities which were very suspicious, and it was believed that he was disguised as a police officer. When they saw the police officer's face, the FBI agents realized that the person was a Colombian terrorist named Claudio Perini, nicknamed El Lobo. It was believed that Claudio carried out the terror as a form of revenge over American oppression of Colombia. Not long after, a special agent named Peter Brand appeared. He was one of the targets that Claudio targeted while he was in a convoy of Colombian officials. But luckily, at that time, he was far from the explosion. When he met Gordon, Brand expressed his condolences for the death of Gordon's family, and he promised to find the perpetrator, Claudio, who killed Gordon's family. After returning from the funeral, Gordon still couldn't accept the death of his son and wife. He felt devastated when he had to accept the fact that from now on, he had to live without his family. Gordon had been asleep, but then he woke up when he heard the sound of the news on television, showing a video recording containing a statement from El Lobo. He admitted to being the perpetrator of the explosion. In fact, he was also the mastermind behind all the previous explosions, including the explosion in front of the Columbia Consulate building in Los Angeles. Meanwhile, at the Department of State Dole's Annex building, the Supervisory Committee gave a strong reprimand to Peter Brandt, as a special agent, who was considered to be the trigger for war between Colombia and America because of his mission to fight guerrillas in Colombia. For this reason, the Senate Supervisory Committee asked Brandt to immediately stop his mission operations for the sake of security and peace, and also in stopping El Lobo and his guerrillas' terror against America. Even though he had received warning, Brant did not immediately stop his mission. He actually ordered his men to immediately prepare the plane to launch to Colombia. Not long after, Brant got a call from Gordon. Here, Gordon asked Brant to fulfill his promise and asked about the progress of the search for El Lobo, who killed his wife and son. But how disappointed Gordon was when he heard Brant's statement, which said that for now, justice for his son and wife is not a priority that must be prioritized. This made Gordon fed up, so he planned to come to Colombia, but first he tried to find information about the guerrilla troops led by El Lobo. With the help of an FBI agent and a former military advisor who had previously served in Colombia, Gordon was provided with information about what transportation could take him there, and also a passport was made so that Gordon could be allowed to enter the country. At the same time, Brant finally arrived in Colombia. He was greeted by his military allies and planned a major attack to bring down El Lobo with his guerrilla troops. The next day, Gordon left for Colombia. With a passport and limited information, Gordon was determined to get on a bus that was going to take him to the border. The next morning, Gordon was still asleep on the bus, but suddenly gasped in shock when he saw all the passengers scattering out of the bus. He was curious about what happened, so he asked one of the passengers. The woman told him that ahead there, the guerrillas were stopping and inspecting every vehicle that was going to pass through the border. The bus driver felt responsible, suggesting to all the passengers to hide next to the moving bus, hoping that they could escape inspection. But unfortunately, when they ran into the forest, they're caught up. Luckily, in the end, Gordon was saved after the current dragged him to the upper river, even though he had to give up his bag containing his provisions and passport. Meanwhile, at the station, Brant got news from his subordinates that Gordon was currently on his way to Colombia to find Claudio. Hearing this, Brant was shocked because he was worried about Gordon's safety. Without any experiences, it would be impossible for Gordon to enter or leave Colombia safely. At the same time, in the guerrilla camp, one of Claudio's trusted men, Roman, gave a copy of Gordon's passport, which they found in his bag. Seeing this, Claudio smiled, realizing Gordon's stupidity. He took advantage of the situation to get ransom money by ordering all his guerrillas to focus on capturing Gordon. Meanwhile, by boarding a wooden boat, Gordon arrived at a fishing port. One of the fishermen told him information that there were some local residents who were willing to provide passport-making services. So without waiting any longer, Gordon immediately went to a local market and ignored a watch trader, who realized that Gordon was the person the local police were looking for. That man immediately gave the information to the head of the Colombian police. At the same time, the disguised guerrillas also saw Gordon's whereabouts, and when Gordon accidentally saw a boy was going to be hit by a motorcycle, Gordon tried to help because he remembered his late son and wife. He then tried to stop the commotion. Unfortunately, Gordon didn't realize something. While Gordon was chatting with the boy and his mother, the Colombian police and guerrillas were hunting him as their target. When he was held in a prison, Gordon saw a man who was also detained because he was caught committing harassment. This man was Sean Armstrong, a Canadian mechanic, and so far, local residents have used his services to repair things related to machines. When he found out that Sean Armstrong was a mechanic, Gordon asked him so that he would sell his passport at a high price. But unfortunately, Armstrong rejected it outright. That evening, while the police guards were busy watching a football match on television, they didn't realize that the guerrillas were sneaking into the prison area. By Claudio's orders, the guerrillas were assigned to kidnap Gordon and free the guerrillas who had been detained with Gordon this afternoon. This incident caused the police to panic. Gunfire and explosions destroyed almost all of the prison, making Armstrong very scared, while Gordon looked calm and tried to take cover so as not to get shot. That's when he saw a guerrilla go inside, and he felt familiar with his face, making him believe that the man was El Lobo. Claudio and his troops succeeded in killing the police officers and freed the guerrillas. Gordon, who had been hiding, quickly grabbed a guerrilla who was holding a grinding machine, strangled his neck until he died and managed to get out after cutting the iron bars using the grinding machine. When they both managed to get out of the prison, Armstrong said that he wanted to stop working as a mechanic, so he asked Gordon to disguise as a mechanic, telling him to go to the port to meet a man named Felix Ramirez, a businessman who produces drugs, hoping that Gordon would be able to pretend to be a mechanic to replace Armstrong. In the morning, Gordon left by riding a boat, heading to the port. He had to cross a river surrounded by mangrove forest, but on the way, a troop of guerrillas appeared from behind. The boat was stopped and taken to the harbor pier. Arriving at the pier, Gordon was interrogated by a guerrilla, and that's when he was approached by a man, Felix Ramirez, the person Armstrong had told him about last night. Gordon then started pretending to fake his identity. He introduced himself as Hendrik Beckman, the person who was sent as Armstrong's replacement to repair Felix's generator engine. At first, Felix was a little doubtful, but then Gordon said that Armstrong was currently in prison for harassing a policeman's daughter. Felix finally believed it and immediately took Gordon to his cocaine factory to show him the damaged generator, which Gordon would later repair. But in fact, Gordon didn't know anything about the machine. He actually assembled an explosive and placed it at several locations in the building. Meanwhile, Claudio received information from his man who was on guard at the port. He said that he did not know that the mechanic named Hendrik Beckman was actually Gordon who managed to trick him. Knowing his man's stupidity made Claudio angry and looked so annoyed. So without the slightest feeling of empathy, he punished his man by forcing a snake into his mouth. On the other hand, in the warehouse, Gordon continued to make explosives. And when he was about to finish his work, he faintly heard a commotion outside. Felix was killed by the guerrillas, and Gordon, who was hiding under the truck, witnessed how they killed Felix. Because they couldn't find Gordon, the guerrilla troops had to return home empty-handed. And without them knowing, Gordon hung under their truck, taking him to the guerrilla camp. When he arrived there, Gordon slowly got out from under the truck. He crept into the camp area and placed a handheld grenade in a petrol tank. After installing explosives at several points, Gordon immediately left the place, but he saw the boy he helped yesterday walking with his mother, Selena. Gordon tried to fend off both of them, who ran close to the explosion area, but Gordon was caught instead. The next morning in a warehouse, Gordon was still lying weak after being held there all night, but when Selena washed his face, finally Gordon woke up. Gordon was curious about Selena. Then he asked who she really was. Selena revealed that she was Claudio's wife. When Selena left the warehouse, Gordon said the swear words regarding Claudio's cruel actions, which killed his family some time ago. Revenge and hatred were clearly visible in Gordon's eyes. Even when he was being held captive, Gordon dared to say that at this time, his intention was to kill Claudio. Hearing Gordon's statement, Claudio was mad. He was grinning as if he didn't like Gordon's words, and finally he got up and tried to attack Gordon. When Gordon woke up from fainting, he heard a commotion outside. Then he tried to peek through the gap. Gordon saw Selena fighting with Claudio just to defend him. Meanwhile, Brandt received information that Gordon had succeeded in finding Claudio's camp. Not wanting Gordon to take over his mission, Brandt ordered his troops to immediately get ready to launch an attack on Claudio's camp. The next day, Selena returned to see Gordon in the warehouse. She told Gordon the reasons behind the terror that Claudio has carried out against America. Selena told a very heartbreaking story. When she first met Claudio, he was just a civilian who worked as a teacher. Until finally, she and Claudio got married and were blessed with a beautiful daughter, Sofia. Shortly that noon, American soldiers led by Brandt moved by 2 helicopters towards the guerrilla headquarters. And at the same time, Selena secretly went into the warehouse to meet Gordon and then opened the handcuffs. Selena expressed her feelings that she was fed up with Claudio's actions. She asked Gordon to take her to America, and she did all this to get away from her husband, who was increasingly uncontrollable. Hearing this request, Gordon looked doubtful at first, but when Selena said that Claudio was currently on his way to Washington to plant a bomb, Gordon immediately agreed to Selena's request. While they were sneaking away from the troops who were on guard, suddenly Brandt's troops appeared, destroying the guerrilla troops, who immediately panicked. At that time, Gordon took advantage of this critical situation, taking Selena and Morrow quickly to escape from there. Not long after, the guerrilla camp was then bombarded by air missiles dropped by Brandt's troops, causing all the guerrilla troops to die. Meanwhile, Gordon and Selena were moving towards the edge of the forest, but they had to stop when Gordon realized that the ground in front of them was embedded with several mines. Gordon was forced to clear the mines first before they passed through it. The mine explosion made some of Brandt's troops suspicious, and they rushed towards the explosion. Not long after, Brandt appeared and greeted them. Proudly, he told Gordon that his mission to destroy the Colombian terrorists had been successful. But his arrogance disappeared. His facial expression changed into confusion when Gordon said that the leader of the terrorists had tricked them. Currently, Claudio was in America and would soon detonate a bomb in Washington, D.C. Shortly, Gordon, Selena, and her son finally arrived in Washington, D.C. They were warmly welcomed by the commissioner and also high-ranking American officials. Gordon introduced Selena to the FBI agents Phipps and Agent Dre. Selena was the only key person who knew where the bomb was. At that time, Phipps took her and showed several possible locations via satellite. hoping that Selena could recognize it as the target location for the bomb planted by her husband. Meanwhile, at the same time, Claudio entered a train station and amidst the crowd, he placed a suitcase containing the bomb in the gap between a trash can and a flower pot. But unfortunately, a homeless old man saw him and thought that the suitcase was full of cash. So without waiting any longer, the old man quickly took the suitcase and immediately left the crowd. A few moments later, Selena finally found a location that had been shown by her husband. She was very sure that it was the train station building that was Claudio's target, so without further ado, Phipps immediately asked for a copy of the CCTV camera from the train station. And sure enough, they saw Claudio there a few moments ago, and also an old man who took the suitcase. Meanwhile, Gordon approached Selena to say thank you for her help, but Selena looked worried as if she regrets her actions. Seeing Selena's anxiety, Gordon tried to comfort her, saying that what she had done had indirectly saved many human lives. However, Selena still looked anxious, so she asked one of the women to take her to the toilet, in the hope that she could calm her mind for a moment. When she got up from her chair, Selena asked Moro, her adopted son, to come with her. But the boy refused, making Selena annoyed, and she clapped her hands as if threatening the boy. Gordon, who saw this, was surprised by Selena's behavior. He protected the boy, saying that Moro would be fine with him. In the toilet, the woman who accompanied Selena kindly gave her a tissue. But when Selena finished washing her nose with the tissue, she suddenly attacked the woman. A fact then emerged. Flashback to the incident at the Consulate General of Colombia building some time ago. Turns out, Selena was part of the explosion that killed Gordon's wife and son. At that time, she was controlling the remote control on the cell phone she was holding. So it can be confirmed that Selena and Claudio deliberately set the scenario by using Gordon, and Selena pretended to betray her husband. In fact, the suitcase the old man took was empty. Meanwhile, Gordon remembered the dinosaur toy that Moro brought. He suspected that the toy was a bomb, so without thinking twice, Gordon immediately ran to meet Moro. And sure enough, when Gordon threw the toy out of the window, a big explosion occurred. Meanwhile, in the car belonging to the National Gas Company, Claudio disguised himself as a technician, assisted by a man who was thought to be an insider who worked there. After they were ready to act, the man then got out of the car and immediately opened the wind door screw to the underground gas pipe room. After the door opened, Claudio immediately entered by riding a motorbike. There, Claudio opened the access door to enter the car brought by his colleague. And when the car was parked, his colleague then activated the high-explosive bomb which had been embedded in the car. When the elevator closed again and took Selena to the ground floor, there was no choice for Gordon. He was forced to enter the hostway. Using his belt, Gordon immediately slid, hooking his belt to a steel rope. But unfortunately, Selena realized this and quickly got out through the emergency exit. Selena managed to get out of the hostway room, and at that moment she immediately ran into the underground gas pipe room to meet Claudio, who had been waiting according to their plan. Gordon realized that the underground tunnel also functioned as a place for the gas pipe in the tunnel wall. At that moment, he got an idea. Gordon immediately entered the control room and closed all the gates. After successfully thwarting Claudio and Selena's plan to escape, Gordon then took an emergency axe and broke the gas pipeline, so when they returned, Selena pulled the trigger of her gun at Gordon, who was running. The tunnel, which had been smeared, immediately exploded. Claudio saw his wife lying down and no longer moving. He beat Gordon repeatedly with the exhaust from his motorbike and then took the remote control in his pocket to immediately detonate the bomb in the car. But stupidly, he didn't immediately finish off Gordon. Instead, he asked Gordon for his vow to kill him, without realizing that Gordon quickly picked up the axe on the floor. After all was over and the bomb in the car was successfully defused, Gordon walked out of the building. He got everyone's attention, but Gordon didn't care about the people around him. He actually met Morrow right in front of the Department of Foreign Affairs building. After losing his son, Matty, Gordon decided to adopt Morrow.